I'd like to welcome everyone, and we're going to be talking about driving the future of work with low-code and citizen developers. So we've been joined by an esteemed group of colleagues. We have Alan Joen, account director from Collier Pickard. Welcome, Alan.
Hi.
All right. We're also joined by Artie Devi, Global Head of Customer Experience Management, Enterprise Application Services. That's a long title, Artie. Artie is joining us from Tata Consultancy Services, so welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right.
For having me.
Excellent. And last but certainly not least, Mr. Jim Love, CIO and Chief Content Officer, ITWC. Jim, welcome. You look very professional. With the microphone and everything. I feel I don't have the right equipment now.
I assure you there are jeans on underneath this desk.
Wonderful,
I turned up in a t-shirt yesterday, and I don't normally do that, but I was running to a meeting, and I got in there and went, oh, and somebody said, well, it's a casual meeting. Don't worry about it.
Perfect. Excellent. So we've got a great audience, very active in the chat. So I'm sure we'll have lots of questions and lots of feedback. And I'm excited to be joined by you guys. It's always a pleasure to have such an open discussion. And as we look at to the future of low code and citizen developers, we understand that there's benefits, there's challenges, and when we're looking to explore how that's going to be, I'd like to start with Artie. Artie, I've got a question for you, and hopefully you're ready to go right off the bat here. So to start our conversation, why is the demand for citizen developers tools growing so fast, and how do you see this? How do you see this moving forward?
Absolutely, thank you, Eric, for the question. So before I go into the drivers of the entire citizen development and low code, no code, let me share some statistics with you. As per Gartner, the entire low-code, no-code technologies is going to be $30 billion market by 2025. And one more data point, 70% of all application development is going to be in low-code, no-code technologies. So it is writing on the wall. It is a no-brainer that customers are embracing low-code, no-code technologies and building out business applications much faster and more efficiently. Now coming to the drivers of low code, no code, and the sudden surge in demand for the citizen development tools. The first and foremost, I would say, is the digital transformations, the number of programs that customers are initiating across industries, across geographies. So this stresses out the IT teams a lot, because the numbers are so high that there is not enough bandwidth within the IT teams to develop these applications so fast and so efficiently. And to add to that, there is a shortage of IT resources in the market. What I mean by IT resources is really the IT professionals who are like developers, the hardcore coders in the market. There is a scarcity of these resources. So with this, IT would really welcome the change that embracing the new stakeholders from business into their families. So digital transformation is one of the key business drivers to see the increase in the number of developer tools today. Number two, hyper automation. So we're taking automation to the next level. There's always been some automation, in certain applications, and they were able to do it to, cut down on manual work. But as we see today, customers want to automate anything and everything that they could potentially. In fact, rightly so, right? Why should there be any manual task when they can allocate the same time in some other activities like strategy or visioning or innovation and so on and so forth. So with hyper automation, just to give you more example that we had for one of our customers, we help the citizen development teams there in their implementation of contact center. It's in the CRM world. So right from when the consumer puts in the service request through any channel, whether it be a WhatsApp channel or SMS or a virtual assistant, to the time that it gets resolved, everything is automated. It's like end-to-end automation. And we're not just talking about simple things like what is the status of my complaint or things like that, but actually, what is my loan amount after I deduct my taxes and so on and so forth. Very complex calculations. You could actually do that automation end to end without an intervention of IT or even the agent. We call this unassisted care. And for that to happen, you need to have technologies which will let you do that, right? You need to have workflow technologies. You need to have artificial intelligence. You need to have machine learning. And not only these, but you should be able to design the application easily. For that, you need capability of say a visual designer, graphical user interface. You need DevOps, you need cloud. And plus, you need a solid foundation of the tool of having scalability, having performance, resilience, flexibility in churning out these business capabilities to business, right? So all these ingredients are required in the low-code, no-code technologies, and hence you see, just the demand right there going up. And lastly, I would like to mention, we wouldn't be completing this webinar without the mention of COVID impact. So it just added fuel to the fire, right? I mean, no brainer that remote working and the changing dynamics in the market, customers had to respond to the new market conditions. They had to churn newer business capability, new applications on the fly. So I would say low-code, no-code has actually really validated, and COVID has validated the value proposition of this entire industry on citizen development. So I would leave those last comments on the surge of demand and low-code, no-code in the market today. Eric.
Yeah, that's a tremendous take on that. And I'm actually glad that you kind of brought that up at the end, right? With COVID and how that's really changed the way a lot of people think about technology, right? Thinking about how quickly they have to pivot and how quickly they have to adapt to changing models. Those digital transformation cycles that were 3 to 5 year roadmaps have turned into we got to do this today. Otherwise, we could be in serious trouble as an organization. Jim, what's your take on that? On what's driving that demand?
Backlog. I mean,
Yeah.
we've consistently had a backlog of applications and needed applications. We are prisoners of legacy applications, and financially, and more importantly in terms of customer experience. And I'll say more, I'll leave that more importantly in terms of customer experience, because financially we were nearly consumed by our legacy applications, and a lot of people have fought very hard and long fights to try and reduce that. There was a time when I started out where 90% of your expense was keeping the lights on, maintaining those big applications, and they weren't responsive. And that's even more important now, because in a world where you got 3 seconds to make a connection with a customer, they'll click somewhere else. We've been talking about that world forever, and COVID put us in a time machine. We went 5 years into the future, and so now people are starting to really talk about not just the legacy, the prisoner of legacy and the technical debt that creates, but also the idea of how do we be responsive to customers? How do we be innovative? How do we give that incredible customer experience? And I tell my team right now, if you're not interested in an incredible customer experience, get out of my shop. Why? I can't carry you. Those days are done. Those days of being able to carry somebody who can sort of plod along and we'll get it to you when you get it to you, those are done. The customer will go. And so this is a necessity for all of us, a competitive necessity. And as CIOs, we've all fought our way. We all had that thing about fighting our way to the business table. We got to the business table and we found out the business table is about business and it's about customers. And everybody's got a heartache story about mine's technology. I got to take care of that. Yours is you got operations, but we all got to come together and deliver an incredible customer experience. That's the promise of low code, no code. That's what it enables. And that's going to speak to everybody from the CIO to the CEO throughout the organization. I'm very bullish on where this can go because it frees us from that technical legacy. And that's when, at a time when we need it more, we need it bad, as they say in the commercial.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. That is, that could be a last competitive differentiator, right? You have to be providing that service, customer experience, because with the amount of competition coming from everywhere, you know what I mean? There's no shortage of competitors. You can only sell on price for so long. You can only sell on product differentiation for so long before your competitors catch up. That last differentiator really is that customer experience, and being able to stay ahead of your competitors on that is crucial to any business in any industry.
Yeah,
Alan, I know. With your 40 years of experience in CRM, you've got to have a comment here.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think both Artie and Jim have been very articulate on the point, and the two things are the lack of experience that's out there, the skills that you need to sustain a big IT centralized infrastructure. They're just not there. You can't find the people, and therefore you can't be responsive. In Jim's point, you can't be responsive in the way you need to be in today's customer-driven world. So the skill shortage is the problem that low code will solve. One of the guys I'm connected with in CRM here in the UK, he was on the development side of old-fashioned CRM, so he was skilled in JavaScript and C+ and HTML5, and very used to getting inside systems, listening to the customer requirement, and making bespoke versions of CRM packages. And he was recruited by the police force here in the UK, who have masses of legacy systems and no real way of adapting low code within their world. The police force in the UK is completely strapped for resources. They're undermanned. They have job vacancies that they can't fill. And so they're prepared to take on a guy with no experience of data analysis, no data science skills, but a skill set that says he can develop, and they're going to put him through Python training and make him proficient in AI and machine learning, and then let him loose on their legacy data in order to try to give them insights at all the crime statistics and the information that's locked away in these legacy systems. Now, for me, that's a kind of desperate measure. If that organization had taken a different view and instead of saying, how can we fix the skill shortage problem, and our solution is we'll just try and create our own new skills pool. If they'd looked at the problem with a completely different point of view and said, this problem isn't going to go away, what can we do to not just put a Band-Aid on the problem, but what can we do to make it right for the future? Then they might well have turned around and said, what we actually need is to democratize the way that this analysis is being done and adopt a low-code, a no-code approach, so that the very detectives who need this analysis in order to look for trends and look for patterns and act accordingly, they'll be able to work that out for themselves, maybe with the help and guidance or the governance from their IT centrally, but basically providing the resource that's more sustainable for the future, rather than having to continually train programmers. So with I know the police is not really a commercial environment, but that if you take a look at an organization on the commercial side that got locked up in the same problem. I read recently that during the pandemic, Amtrak in the US were unable to provide the IT resource they needed to react to some of the things they needed to react to because of the pandemic. And because of their low-code policy, they managed to create a contact tracing system for Amtrak travelers through low-code, through the business operations people being able to develop that. The low-code platform that they chose made the application responsive, so it doesn't matter whether the traveler is using an Apple or an Android phone or picking up information through a browser. The resultant tracing system that they built was fully adaptive to all those environments, and I think the power of low code in today's environment is demonstrated well by the Amtrak example in the US, and the problem which will be perpetual with legacy systems is demonstrated by the recruitment policy of the police here in the UK.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's actually a great point. And I saw an interesting question in the chat from the audience about that. To come back to your point, Alan, the question that I saw in the chat is a good one, right? Because when we think about low code and we think about citizen development, the question that we normally get from a lot of our customers, and I'm sure that you guys are seeing it as well, is, what applications can we actually develop with low code? And that's a great example of the police department, Amtrak. We've seen multiple customers creating different types of applications utilizing low code. So to kind of just touch on that, Artie, what are some of the key applications that you're seeing being developed on low code at this point?
Absolutely, Eric. So you may categorize the kinds of application broadly into three. One is the nature of record keeping. Things like inventory management or customer data and demographics or any of those record keeping in nature. Those are definitely short case for a low-code, no-code application. The second category is that of shared services, as in scheduling, logistics, and if you just take it a little more in a business function, say for example CRM, things like campaign management or lead management. And for one of our customers, we actually implemented low-code, no-code for their lead management, for field service management, as well as marketing, right? Campaign, the entire suite of marketing activities around events and so on and so forth. So that is the category that of the shared services. And then you have another set of use cases that you can deploy for extending the core applications. Say, for example, for one of the customers, they had their ERP in one of those SAP applications, but there was an extension required on the SAP module, which they did not do it in SAP, but they thought doing it in low-code, no-code was the faster and much more efficient way. So they actually did the extension on the integrations with payment gateway, and the entire payment module was actually built in low-code, no-code. And TCS has helped a lot of the citizen developers in multiple use cases. We've done one more where it was an insurance firm, and we actually enabled their contact center for any types of claims management, policies management, and so on and so forth. So the entire use case on customer-facing applications, we see a lot from what we've spoken to our customers about.
Mm-hmm. And I guess when we look at what types of applications can be developed with low code, How much of that do you see falling outside of the IT department? We had a great presentation from John Bratensevic from Forrester earlier, and he gave the example of applications that are being developed with low code. You want that citizen development, but do you want those applications, say for like in healthcare, to prescribe medicine? We probably don't want to do that in citizen development. So, what do you see in terms of what types of applications can be built inside as well as outside IT groups?
I'm not sure that we're talking about developing applications anymore in the same way that we talked about where you start and you build from everything. More, we're talking about integration, and I think that's a piece, and extension. And let me just back up on that. First of all, if anybody in my shop came to me and said there was an application out there I could buy for a SaaS application, I want to build it, I'd first ask them, are you crazy? And second, give me a really good business case for why we should be building an application somebody already built. we whether it's open source, whether it's out there, whether it's licensed, it doesn't matter. Let's not spend our time building stuff that's already built in there. But when you break that down and you start to think of applications not as a monolith, but as a connection of services, which is more and more how we want to see our world. Not whether we get to a full microservices architecture or not, but a connection of services, then you start to look at the problem differently. And it's, how do I connect these things? Because we are in danger. The biggest danger we have of the user generated application, or the shadow IT, is not that they'll bring in an application. It's they'll bring in an application that doesn't connect to our other things. And before you know it, you got 3 databases, and we're right back where we started, to islands of data. Now, I think one of the biggest promises of low code, no code is being able to bridge those gaps in the early stages, being able to bring those things together. But eventually, we're going to stop talking about application. We're going to talk about, I need this service. And I won't monopolize, but in Microsoft, when they started the Microsoft development, everybody remember Windows and how clunky it was and how big it was. One reason it was so big and clunky was if you wrote the cut and paste routine for Windows, to get that tested through the stack and back was a 12-week enterprise. 12 weeks to find out whether your little piece of that enterprise code worked. Can't work like that anymore. So we need to encapsulate, we need to talk about services, we need to talk about integrating services and extending to the customer. And so I think we'll see this world differently, and low code, no code. So just the last thing, medical device. I'll pull the code from the medical device. I'll write the wrapper around it. I'll have a good steel, ironclad medical device that will do what it does all the time, that somebody will maintain, and they're great at that. But I will write the user interface. I will write the data, the data extract. I will write the reporting. That's the promise. I'm jazzed about this. After 40 years, I'm ready to get out there again.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, then that's a great point. I think again, bringing all of that together in a seamless interface is the benefit of low code, even above and beyond developing applications. It's really about tying all of those together in a consistent, consumable manner for the customers. So I'll switch gears here a little bit from the technology aspect of it, and think about it from kind of a job perspective, right? So if we look at low code, there's always that fear, right? Is low code going to take jobs away from traditional developments, or developers? But that we know that that's not the case. There's always going to be a need for traditional development well into the future. But where do you think are low code solutions that are creating jobs for people out there? Like, how are we creating jobs with citizen development and low code? Artie, I'll let you take a stab at that one, because it looks like we might have lost Alan for a minute. He seems to have dropped off. Maybe bad connectivity in the UK today, anyway.
Sure, absolutely. So, and just given where we are, with the scarcity of resources all over, IT professionals are much more scarce than ever before. There's no reason for the either of those teams, either from business or IT, to feel insecure about their roles, because there's a huge market. As I stated, there's a $30 billion market for us to capture, and everybody is going to have a role in it. And really, we're talking about how do we come together. So if you look at the definition of the citizen developers themselves, right, it's really a mix of IT and business. It is the intersection of both these communities that help each other in building the business applications. While businesses are very clear on their requirements, they know exactly what to do, and if we're able to empower them into using the right technologies, they're able to code what they know already. So that's a perfect window. But nevertheless, it doesn't. It's not as easy as it sounds. So I think both IT and business have to work together. Have to work together seamlessly in a way that they empower each other, right? So if you look at some of the steps and how the empowerment can happen, is number one is the selection of the tool. That is the first and foremost step that you would want to aid the business, the leadership, that selection of the tool in a structured manner. There are about 600 tools in the market today on low code, no code. Imagine you're selecting your, the very top 2 or top 3 relevant to your requirements. So, so you would want to list down your evaluation criteria. What are those parameters? It could be business, technical, functional, anything that is relevant for you and for your requirements. Give the right weightages, come out with a score, objectively, and then decide which is the right one for you. And there could be some subjectivity around it, which is fine, but that you have a scientific basis of arriving at a tool. And having selected the tool, you train the teams. The business has to be trained in a way that you increasing the adoption of the tool, right? At the end of it, every person has a role in the organization. And as I said earlier, there's no way one could be feeling insecure about it. So you train the teams, and you make it more formal, give them a certificate. There could be levels of certifications, and you can have many approaches. You could train them in mass of one whole community, or you can use the approach of train the trainer. So you identify your super users, your power users, let them be your champions, train them, make them efficient, put in, lab exercises, hands-on, let them get their hands dirty in the application. And then you send those champions out in the larger community for them to, train and make the teams more efficient. There's a slight bit of demarcation of activities, at least in the initial phases of training and of project execution, of what is ideally done by business and what is ideally done by IT. Say, for example, a user interface, a user experience is best done by business. They already know the use case, they know the flow of information, they know the data elements, whether it is a decision tree there or it's an underlying workflow approval required. What are the prerequisites for this task given the subsequent task has to be accomplished? So all of those, the user experience, the workflow capability, and if I relate to my role in the CRM world, things like promotion management, campaign management, or pricing administration, or product family configuration. So all those are best done by business. And on the other side, on the IT, you're really talking about setting up the data model, the integrations, the interfaces, the security, and right about the entire governance on data itself, right? How clean is the data, how pure is the data, and for all this, I believe it's not watertight compartments. You can still be fluid at a later point in time, and you could have a governance institutionalized through a center of excellence, which will state the standards, the policies, the reusability, the checklist, templates, and so on and so forth, just to propagate the the roadmap on low code, no code in a very seamless fashion in an organization.
Great, great. Yeah, all great points, Artie, in terms of how we're trying to develop this ecosystem surrounding low code development. So I think those are great points, and how we could create additional functionalities for developers throughout an organization. That's a good lead into a question for you, Jim. So as people are learning and they're starting to adapt low code technologies, what do you think is needed to empower those citizen developers? Outside of the training, what do we need to do to empower them with the skills necessary to utilize those tools?
I picked up something interesting from the Forrester presentation, and that was where you brought in a mentor and somebody who could mentor a group of people. And I know this because I'm doing my own sort of toe in the water stuff on low code, no code right now. And I took a developer and I took a person with no development skills, and I gave them both a project using low code, no code, just to see how they would develop it. And I realized that you needed some foundational thoughts about how you start to think about development. And so that part of the coaching has to be there. You don't need the technical skills. Syntax is, like, the best programmers are not the ones who learn the syntax. As a matter of fact, the person who's most up on the latest thing and they're going to cram everything into one bite and they're going to do all that sort of stuff, generally your crappiest programmer in terms of but in terms of what the user's experience and satisfaction is. They're great to have for optimizing, don't get me wrong, but so what you need is that mentorship to bring people along and to lift that sort of mystique of and take the mystique away and say, here, this is a database. This is why we think in these terms. This is why we think in these terms. That's why we call this. And people say, oh, and it's no longer a mystery. And then the people who will excel at this are the people who solve problems, who are your best programmers and your best users. And if you can put them together, you can do this agile thing. Remember agile? We could actually really do it. When we do that. And then who's the coder? Who cares? Mm-hmm. When you can play who's the coder, who cares, now you've got something going for you. And so I think the mentorship, remove the mystery, take away this stuff. We had a term for everything in IT. Sometimes we got 2, sometimes we got 8, and that's how we keep that mystery alive. Get rid of the terminology, get a mentor, get an interpreter, and let that person help bring out the best in everybody. Because no coder wants to do, everybody thinks, like the question about are you coding and be taken away from us? Do you really want to sit there for 4 hours or 8 hours trying to find that bug in your code? Nobody likes that stuff. We like to create. We're guys who stayed up, or women who stayed up all night so we can say, hello world, appear on our screen. It's the thrill of creation. It's debugging is not that's a job I think we'll all gladly give up.
I love it. And I see that we've got Alan back. Alan.
Hey, Alan's back.
All right.
My apologies. Whilst living in a rural location is great for my well-being, it's not very good for my broadband connection, and I lost it. So I'm back in on cell phone. I hope you can hear me okay.
We can hear you perfect. You sound great, and we understand those challenges. I have those quite frequently as well. So, I know we're getting close here. So, Alan, I want to make sure now that you're back, we can bring you into the conversation here a bit. We were really talking about taking this citizen developer approach, how that's going to be beneficial to organizations. How many citizen, we polled the audience how many are willing to give low code a try. I'm gonna flip the script on that a little bit. I'll put it on you and say, what are some of the flaws with that approach, do you think? Taking that supplemental citizen developer approach. Do you see any flaws with that? What do you see as being a challenge?
Okay, well, I mean, one of the challenges is that if you take people out of business operations environment and ask them to become low-code champions and to help progress the organization with its transformation and its business business future, you potentially diminish their ability to do their regular day job. So if you've got key people who are important to the infrastructure, the way it runs at the minute, important for the level of account management or customer contact that they're directly involved with, and you take them out of that world and ask them to become low-code champions, then potentially the organization says, well, we can't afford that because we're understaffed in that function already, and to impose this extra workload in an attempt to create citizen developers, whilst it might be a great thing in the long run, in the short term, we physically can't provide the human resources that we need to get there. So that stepping stone is potentially a flaw in the argument, and one that organizations need to think about very carefully. Because ultimately the benefit of adopting low code is clear, and that's what we've been talking about today, and that's what this whole low code marathon is about. But if the barrier to entry is we're actually too busy to allocate those champions, then that potentially will slow down the introduction of low code technologies within some organizations. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't mean it's not there. I mean, there are organizations like mine, Collier Pickard, like Artis in TCS, who have skills to come in and help jump that barrier, so outsource some of the low code world, and rather than having to learn it from scratch and do it all yourself, get somebody who can mentor you through it and do those first exercises, build those first business applications for you, whilst you watch what's going on and acquire the knowledge in a kind of osmosis way, rather than having to just pull resources out of your organization, your operational organization, and start from scratch. I'd like to make one extra comment, Eric, and it was at the point where I lost my broadband connection. Jim was talking about the strength of low code in integrations rather than building completely from scratch. And I have a customer here in the UK that is a distribution company, and they are using Creatio in the ways that you would expect. They're putting the marketing tools in, they're putting the sales tools in, they're putting the service tools in for case management. And they had not thought about the integration aspect other than pulling data from their ERP system in to populate customer records in Creatio. They hadn't thought more broadly than that. And we suggested that they take all the data that they're accumulating on cases in the service side of their CRM operation and look at times to respond, times to resolve, because all these things are actually part of the assessment they have to do every other year with their quality management system. So these guys are ISO 9001 certified, and there's an audit that they have to perform every other year to maintain their certification. And the very fact that the data that they need is locked in their case management, their service application inside CRM. With low code, it's very easy to just populate that out of CRM in a process, very easily configured, and all of a sudden their quality management audit is self-populated by the system without the manual efforts that's required. So, I think the shortage of resource is the big flaw in some organizations making that leap. But with the aid of organizations like implementation partners of Creatio, for example, there's an opportunity to make the transition much easier than it would be to just take the whole workload on itself.
Excellent, excellent. Well, folks, I know we are well over time, but this is something that could probably continue. I love these sort of discussions, and hopefully we were able to keep the audience a little over time. They were able to spend some quality time with us here after hours. So I'd like to thank each of you for joining today. Love the insights, love the discussion. Obviously, there's a lot of experience on this team that we see here, and I hope the audience will be able to gather some good insights and take that away with them from today's session. So, Artie, Jim, Alan, thank you again for joining. Love to have this discussion. We'll have to continue it on a longer session.
Thank you very much.
Great meeting you all.